Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Live Train Perform podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Kober. During this episode, I'm going to be covering off on a topic that came up in a recent conversation with Nic Edgerton. So, Nic is a leading physique coach who has coached hundreds of transformations around the world and over 100 top 3 placings in the physique competition in season 2019, season 2020. So that episode was live last week. Great conversation with Nic, and something that he spoke about in that episode was telling his guys to live 90% in the process and 10% in the outcome. So what I'm going to do in today's episode is dive into that topic in a little bit more detail and give the listeners, you guys, some actionable takeaways so that you can start implementing this into your life. So I 100% agree with that. Yes, goals are important. Understanding where you want to be, what the outcome is going to look like is absolutely important, okay? Because if you don't know where you're going, then you don't know how to get there. So yes, you need to set a goal. You need to have a look at where you want to be, okay? But that's the first part. Then what you need to do is figure out exactly where you are, then set a direction that you want to be moving in, and then put into action steps that you're going to be able to take on a day-to-day, weekly basis, monthly basis, yearly basis, whatever, depending on how long it's going to take you to get to your goals. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. I'm going to go through some theory first, and then I'll give you guys some practical examples of how I'm using this in my own life. So one of the models that I like to use when it comes to decision making and planning and deciding on the strategies that I'm going to use is the OODA loop, which is OODA. And the first O stands for observe, the second O stands for orient, the D stands for decide, and A stands for act. So when it comes to the first O, observe, we want to look at where you are in your current situation. How did you get there? What are the circumstances that have led you to that point? Then we want to look at why we want to change it, okay? Then we need to look at how important it is for us to change our current circumstances. Then we also need to look at if that aligns with our values, because if setting a goal, setting a direction doesn't align with your values, then you're not going to do that thing. So that's the first O, is observe exactly where you are. You need to know where you are first before you can then start putting action steps into place to move you in the right direction. An analogy I like to use is if, let's say, someone comes to your house right now, they pick you up, they blindfold you, they take you somewhere within like a 20-kilometer radius, and they drop you off and they say, make your way home, okay? The first thing you need to do before you start moving in a particular direction is you need to know exactly where you are right now, okay? So you observe your location, you figure out exactly where you are, okay? And then you orient yourself, right? This is where I am. I know my home's in this direction. I orientate myself in that direction. So the second O is orient, okay? And that is, where are you in relation to where you want to be? Then how far is it to your destination? Then how long will it take to get to your destination? And then what are your checkpoints along the way, okay? Another example using that analogy that I just gave is, you observe where you are, you orient yourself in the direction that you want to be moving, and then once you get to a certain point, all right, cool, am I still heading in the right direction? Or do I need to adjust? Do I need to change my direction slightly? All right. After we go through orient, then we look at decide, is the D. And the D is, what is the path that you're going to take to make it there? Okay, you're not going to be able to move in a straight line. Sometimes you will, most of the time you won't be able to. Okay, so again, looking at those checkpoints, deciding what you're going to do, where the checkpoints are, and how far apart you put those checkpoints is also important. Okay. Also in decide is, what action steps do you need to implement? This is on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis. Again, looking at what those checkpoints are, and then going, what do I need to do every single day that's going to push me towards that checkpoint? Again, we'll come back to some practical applications after we go through the theory. All right. Something else you need to decide on is what are your non-negotiables. Okay, what are your negotiables? What are the things that you're willing to compromise on? What are the things that you're not willing to compromise on? Okay, this is very important, because if you don't know what your non-negotiables are, then when life gets busy, when you're under the pump, when you're stressed out, when shit happens in life, as it inevitably does, then it's going to throw you off track. So you need to figure out decide what your non-negotiables are going to be, again, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. All right. What else you need to decide on is what are your actions that you're going to use and implement when challenges come up, when setbacks again inevitably happen, because it's going to happen. So you need to have a look at what your actions on when those challenging times do come up. Figure out, decide on what those actions are going to be and how you're going to deal with them, so that you can look ahead, plan for them, deal with them, and then continue moving on. Then A is, what is your action plan? What is going to take you from A to Z? Utilizing those checkpoints of B, C, D, E, etc., etc., etc. What else you need to act upon? You need to look at the boxes that need to be ticked. Again, daily, weekly, monthly basis. What do I need to do today that's going to move me in the right direction to get me to that first checkpoint? So you're going to have these checkpoints along the way that are going to be indicators and let you know whether you're moving in the right direction or not. And these are great for giving you an understanding of, one, if you are moving in the right direction, and two, how long it's taken you to get to those checkpoints. If you'd planned to be at a certain checkpoint after 4 weeks and it actually takes you 8 weeks to get to that checkpoint, then you may need to act in a different manner. Maybe you need to tweak some of those daily habits that you're putting in. Maybe you need to adjust your goal. Maybe you need to adjust your direction. Maybe you need to adjust your non-negotiables. All right. The next thing we need to act upon is being able to auto-regulate what we're doing. So again, I'll relate this into training in a moment. But something to think about is something is always better than nothing. So many people live with this all or nothing mindset, where if I can't get an hour's training, for example, then I'm not going to do anything, which is, it's a self-sabotaging prophecy that just carries over into so many other areas of your life. And I've said this before in a podcast episode, but the analogy I like to use is, hey, well, I'm supposed to get up at this time. That means I need to be at bed at this time so I can get enough sleep, but I can't get to sleep. My brain's busy, blah, 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 blah. Just because I can't get my 7.5 hours sleep to wake up fresh tomorrow, get after the day, okay, just because I'm only going to get 6.5 hours sleep, that doesn't mean that I go, well, fuck it, I'm just going to pull an all-nighter. I'm not going to do that, right? I'm still going to get something in. Something is always better than nothing, right? So that's my act. Once I go through my act, then I go through and observe again. This is the OODA loop, right? Observe, orient, decide, and act. So let's give some practical examples of how I use this with my work. So right now I'm recording this in Russia. I'm in Russia with Peter Yan for his fight camp before he takes on Aljamain Sterling for the title rematch. Now, he's brought me over to Russia to run his strength and conditioning for his fight camp. Now, utilizing these tools, I'm going to give you an example of how I use them. Okay, so first of all, I need to look at what the end state is. Yes, we're setting a goal. Okay, that goal is win that fucking title back, right? How we can do that, I need to observe exactly where he's at right now. Okay, I got into camp, I went through a fighter analysis, had a chat to him, looked at all of his metrics, waking heart rate variability, blood pressure, etc., etc. I observed him in his training sessions. I observed how he was eating. I observed his body composition, his weight, his energy levels, etc., etc. So that's the O, the first O, all about observe. Okay, then orient. Okay, we've got that goal. Now we need to orient ourselves in that direction. Again, I'm setting those checkpoints along the way. All right, 1 week out from the fight or 10 days out from the fight, we want him at this weight. Okay, that means that that's 10 kilos away essentially. So that means 1 week out from the fight, we want him 5 to 6 kilos heavier than he's going to be fighting at. That means that where we're at right now, and where we need to be then, we need to reverse engineer that. Okay, 2 weeks out, we need to be here. 3 weeks out, we need to be here. 4 weeks out, we need to be here, etc., etc. We're reverse engineering that process. Okay, and that's the same thing with the strength work, the power work, the speed work, the conditioning work. Right, we're looking at where he wants to be for that fight. We're looking at his game plan. We're looking at who he's fighting. We're looking at his strengths and weaknesses. Okay, we decide, right, we're moving in this direction. We orientate ourselves in that direction. Right, I need to be focusing on strength, stability, and power for the first couple of weeks. Then we need to move into some power and speed development for a couple of weeks. Then we need to move into power and speed endurance for the next couple of weeks, whilst also incorporating some mobility, stability work in there as well. Okay, so that's the Orient. We're looking at those checkpoints along the way and making sure that we're hitting those checkpoints. Okay, decide. We've only got a certain period of time. Okay, I'm in fight camp for like 7 weeks. We've only got a certain period of time to get as much good quality work done as possible. So I need to decide what is going to be the most important thing. And again, I just gave you guys a rundown of pretty much what the periodized plan is. So I need to, one, decide what the overall intent is, where we want to be at that end state. Okay, then working backwards. 2 weeks out, I want to be here. 4 weeks out, I want to be here. 6 weeks out, I want to be here. Okay, then we're deciding on a weekly basis. We're deciding on a daily basis what actions need to occur, what training needs to occur to allow us to move in that direction. All right, and again, this is where something else I need to decide is, how much I'm going to allow him to take it easy, how much recovery we're going to add in there, how much food we're going to be eating, what type of food he's going to be eating to fuel training, performance, recovery, sleep, hormones, whilst also reducing weight, etc., etc. Okay, so again, we're looking at those negotiables, we're looking at those non-negotiables. Okay, there's certain things that I need him to achieve on a weekly basis, a daily basis, a monthly basis, etc., etc. Along the way, that's going to ensure that we're ticking those boxes along the way. All right, then the next thing is act, right? That means, right, what can we do today that is going to move us in the right direction, right? We're looking at all of his training. I'm looking at his training, I'm looking at his workload, I'm looking at his intensity, I'm looking at his energy levels, how he moves. All right, I'm looking at all of these aspects that are contributing to the entire fight camp, because I am just one piece of the puzzle as his strength and conditioning coach. He's also working with his striking coaches, he's also working with his grappling coaches, he's also working with his other training partners and things like that. So we need to tie everything in together, and my piece of the puzzle needs to be as dialed in as possible, and I need to understand what the goal is, so then we can orient ourselves in the correct direction. Then we can decide on what's going to be the most important, because here's the thing, like, if I know that he's got a really fucking hard sparring session coming up in the afternoon, then I'm not going to absolutely hammer him in a strength and conditioning session in the morning, right? That's going to be taking away from his sparring session, his skills and drills, which is going to be the most important thing. So again, that comes back to those non-negotiables and those negotiables. Okay, we're deciding on what is important, what the most important thing is, because we want to keep the most important thing, right? But we also need to act in line with other coaches and say, hey man, this is what we want to be achieving, this is what we want to be doing. The reason we want to be doing this is for X, Y, Z. So I'm going to be training him hard in tomorrow's session. I need you to back him off a little bit, still do enough to elicit the response that you want, but not so much that you start hammering him into the ground and start taking away from his performance and his ability to recover. So once we go through that ACT process, then again we observe. I look at, we put in those action steps on a daily, weekly basis. In 2 weeks time, we observe, where are we right now? Is what we're doing moving us in the right direction? Are we achieving those checkpoints? Are we bringing body weight down? Are we improving body composition? Are we giving him enough energy to be able to train, perform, recover, sleep well, etc.? Are we making sure that he's getting the correct macronutrients so to support that performance, etc., etc.? So That OODA loop is extremely important to understand in every area of life. I just gave you guys an example of how that works in a strength and conditioning camp, okay, but you can apply those exact same principles to every other area of your life. So again, the OODA loop is observe where you are right now, because without knowing where you are right now, then you can't set a direction. Okay, the next one is orient. What direction do I need to be moving? Okay, how am I going to start moving in that direction? And it's not just about moving in that direction. Sometimes it's about stopping yourself moving in the wrong direction. All right, having some checkpoints along the way to ensure that you are moving in the right direction, and having some parameters on either side to, again, ensure that you don't start moving too far off that path. What those tools are for you is going to be completely up to you. Okay, you need to figure out what those tools are. All right, decide what's important, decide what's not important, decide what you're going to go into battle with, decide what your non-negotiables are, decide what your negotiables are, decide what you're willing to compromise on, what you're not willing to compromise on. Okay, and then the last one is act. Without fucking acting, you can't achieve anything. You can't achieve any of your goals, dreams, outcomes without putting some action steps into place. So you need to act in line with, one, what your values are, but two, those the orientation, the direction that you're heading in, and then again acting to ensure that what you're doing is moving in the right direction and stopping yourself from moving in the wrong direction. Okay, those action steps are extremely important. And then again, we go back to observe. Is this working? Is this not working? Do I need to change something? How am I going to change that? How can I redirect myself? How can I put these steps into place on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to keep me moving in the right direction? That's it for me today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If there's anything that you want to hear, please reach out. Let me know. Any 5-star ratings and reviews are much appreciated. Much love, guys. Peace.